That intro gets us pumped up. A lot to be pumped up about today. It's been a long week, I will say. We had Elon drama, Trump drama that was dominating the news lines over the weekend. We kind of thought that would be what we're talking about today. But here we are. Tesla's rallying hard. Robotaxis on the street in Austin. Bradford, how you doing?
Doing good. Excited to talk Tesla Robotaxi with you and a little bit of Elon drama too.
A little bit of Elon drama. We'll make sure we make room for that. I was just looking at the 5-day chart. So where we were last week this time, where do you think we are on the five day? So one trading week.
So I remember talking with you Thursday morning, and the stock was around 322. So I think we're close to flat on the 5-day.
We're down 6%, but
Okay.
it feels like a pretty big victory because we're up, like $50 off the highs, or sorry, off the lows during that time. But so lots of drama, so much going on. But like I'm feeling very pumped. I mean, this is like Robotaxi is something that we've been talking about hypothetically down the road for a very long time. Elon and Tesla have been saying June for like 9 months now, maybe longer. And here we are, like they actually delivered. It's not just, Elon time again. Now, obviously this is day one. Maybe even yesterday was day one, a little bit of uncertainty still around, was this a paid ride that we saw today, or were they just doing some testing before they actually have riders? So still a little bit of uncertainty around the details, but I mean, I think it's safe to say, Robotaxis are on the streets and there will be paid rides this week, this month. And it's a new chapter in the company's thesis.
Tesla is rolling it out in Austin. Let's roll the clip while we continue to talk.
Yeah, so I'm sure most people have seen this by now, but look, pedestrians don't even know that that's a driverless car. Like, I'm losing my mind. You can stop the clip and like see like inside the driver's seat that there's actually no safety driver or anything in there. As Elon said, this is just like a straight off the factory Model Y that you can buy for yourself. It does have a slightly updated version of the software compared to what you and I have, Bradford, and everyone else. But this will presumably be in our cars in the next couple months. So here's Elon's comments. Basically these are cars.
Read the direct quote.
These are unmodified Tesla cars coming straight from the factory, meaning that every Tesla coming out of our factories is capable of unsupervised self-driving. And then Stuart asks, what version of the software do these cars have? Elon responds, it's a new version of software, but will merge to main branch soon. We have a more advanced model in alpha stage that has about 4x the parameters, but still requires a lot of polishing. That's probably ready for deploy in a few months. So a bit of uncertainty, I think, around, there was a previous version of the software that Elon was talking about, had a 3x increase in parameters. So is that what is running in the Robotaxis, and then there's a subsequent 4, or did they just update it to 4?
No, what I think this is I think it has less parameters, but fixes the 4 or so obvious issues that we have.
Why would it be less parameters when the parameter increase changed from 3x to 4x?
So Elon says it's still an alpha. If it was still an alpha, they wouldn't be rolling it out in Austin. Says a lot of polishing. So I don't think they're using that in Austin. I think that's coming in a few months and is not in Austin yet.
Yeah. That part I definitely agree with. I was just thinking of his previous comments where they were talking about or if you go to the release notes on your current version, it says like a 3x increase in parameter size. So it seems like, we haven't had a major update to our FSD that we're using in a couple months. And so I don't know if there's some interim version that we're going to get that's like a 3x increase in parameters, and then there's this other one that's going to be 4. You're very confident. Okay.
No, I think it'll just fix some of the obvious issues we've seen, hopefully. So like when it takes the wrong exit on the interstate, that's a pretty big one. Driving on the wrong side of the road, even if it's unopposed. Going on red lights occasionally. These are things that happen very infrequently, but are present. Also, dodging potholes would be a big one that it'd be nice if they fixed.
Although it seems to have gotten better at that. So at least that's
But
been my experience.
But the list is very short now. That's the
Yeah.
exciting thing. I think we're very far along on the March of Nines. We're much farther along than the skeptics think. And if Tesla wasn't this far along, they would not be rolling it out to Austin.
This
If
is
it,
so obvious, but it's like it's also such a profound point that like people just have in their minds that like, okay, I used to have an intervention like once every drive or two. Yeah, maybe I haven't had a like an actual safety critical intervention in a couple months. But it just doesn't seem like the progress should be that drastic, like a 10 or 100x increase in miles per critical disengagement.
mm,
But I don't think there's any reason to believe that that's actually true, based on Tesla saying for months that they've got like better data than we do across the entire fleet. And their own data was saying it'd be ready by June to be safer or as safe as a human. And now they're
mm,
actually rolling it out. So like the only somewhat valid counter argument I've heard to this point is like, well, they've got teleoperators that are like, watching to make sure that it doesn't do anything like super dangerous. Like, all right, maybe that's well, we do know that that's true to some extent. Now we don't know if it's like a 1-to-1 ratio or a 1-to-10 ratio, but people just act like it's a 1-to-1 ratio, and I think that's taking a pretty logical, a pretty big leap in logic. So
mm.
this is such a big deal, and I think so few people still understand how big of a deal it is. So I'm actually kind of giddy over here. It's it's like this has been a big part of the thesis for so long, and we're finally here. Yeah, I'm pumped.
Yeah, I'm excited. And I'd say the other note that we want to share is that people were hoping for a more affordable Tesla compact, and of course we would still take one if Tesla released one. That would be nice if they did that. And the reason why people want that is so that it expands the total addressable market for Tesla to a more affordable segment, but also a smaller segment that people be more comfortable using on roads, whether it's in Japan or these tight roads in Europe or other places where people just prefer a compact. But what people don't understand is that the Robotaxi does expand the total addressable market in the US. The primary market of rideshare is working class people. So it's the working poor, unfortunately, where people do not have the money to own as many cars as they would like in their family. Maybe they have something wrong with their driving record or their car's in the shop. But these are people who, when they buy a car, they'll pay less than 10 grand. And then once it needs to be fixed, they may not even have the money to fix it. So what they then have to do is then use the ride share until they can get enough money to fix their car or whatever. So most people are using ride shares from Uber and Lyft to commute to and from work. And this expands the TAM to a market that is greatly underserved by Tesla. A lot of Tesla owners are people who are doing well. It's people who maybe they live in the suburbs. Some are in the cities as well, but they live in the suburbs. They have a good paying job and they're able to save. So this greatly expands the total addressable market.
As you were talking, I had a super nerdy analogy I wanted to use. So the energy market, which I've got a background there, like to the low capital cost option if you need power is to buy a peaker. Peaker is just like a super cheap power plant that you can throw on because you just need to get some energy to meet like your need that you have. Like that's kind of how a lot of people are using Uber. That you don't have the $5,000 to make your car repairs or to buy a car, have a down payment, whatever. So you end up with a super inefficient mode of transport that you kind of get stuck in, because you're paying so much more on a dollar per mile basis than you would if you actually owned a car, but you just don't have the funds to do that. So unfortunately, this is kind of like the vicious cycle that a lot of these Uber users find themselves in. And I think it's something important to highlight, because most of us who are, in the more privileged class that have savings and have our own cars, we use Uber when we travel, or like for a night out on the town or something like that. But that I don't know if it's like the 90%, but I think it's fair to say the majority of riders are actually in much harder economic conditions, and this is like a real tax on them to have transportation cost this high. So if instead you can solve the problem and still have the low capital cost of your peaker, where you don't have to pay for a ride, but you can undercut the cost by 50% or more over time. Like that is going to significantly increase demand for transportation from these people. I think there are still going to be some pockets of people who opt for personal car ownership. Andrea St. James had a great interview with Farzad where she was talking about, like, I've got my car seats in my minivan, and like, that's just, we kind of need that. And, I've got young kids too. And I can tell you, it's completely unreasonable to assume that I'm going to be like loading 3 or 4 different car seats in every single time we need to go anywhere, and then like lugging car seats around with us wherever we go. Right. So like, this is not going to be 100% market share everywhere all at once. But there are a lot of other people, like our Jordan, our producer we were just talking to, single guy, doesn't really particularly love driving. And someone like him is like, yeah, why do I need to own a car when I can just like have this ready to pick me up, drop me off wherever I am, and it's going to be cheaper than car ownership. So I think there's a huge part of the overall demographics that would love to not own a car. And there's a very large chunk of the kind of current Uber, Lyft daily users or weekly users that would increase the amount of rides that they're doing if it was offered at a cheaper rate, which Tesla is definitely capable of doing, like drastically lowered prices. So this is going to be, I think, a society changing technology as it rolls out. And the real question now is how fast do we roll out both increasing vehicles within Austin, but then also expanding to other geographies. So we got a pretty exciting 6 months ahead of us, I think.
Yeah, so let's see some other quotes that we have around autonomy. Elon's pretty fired up, but first we have Dave Lee. He's been more active on X recently.
Hey, Dave.
Hey, Dave. I hope your wife's doing okay, and it's great to see videos of your kids. So Dave Lee's talking about a licensing deal with Tesla FSD with at least one automaker by the end of the year. Will likely take a couple of years for the automaker to actually integrate the full self-driving hardware and sell the cars. But I think the announcement will be a surprise to most. And then Elon says, go ahead, Matt.
The automakers keep being told that this isn't real, or that just buying some hardware from NVIDIA will solve it. As Tesla robotaxis become widespread and their solutions don't work, they will naturally turn to us.
Well,
it was a little impromptu. Not my best, to be honest with you. Apologies to the audience.
A little British, but it's all right.
I don't know. All right. I haven't done that in like 6 months, probably. Yeah. So, but the main point, terrible Elon accent aside, is that like this is something that like people are just like, people have had unrealistic expectations around this. That like, yeah, you can, like, they've seen Jensen talk about so like AI for robotaxis at the like NVIDIA presentations that he was doing even just like a month ago. So they're like, okay, well, yeah, we'll just outsource this. Like that system has some cool stuff about it, but it doesn't work. Like you can't buy an NVIDIA autonomous car right now and have it drive you anywhere, or like put that software in any vehicle and have it work as a robotaxi. But you can do that with a Tesla now anywhere in the United States, and actually like generating revenue in Austin at least. So like these ideas of like, oh, we'll just, I had a friend of mine who works for one of the auto companies basically say like, oh yeah, like what we'll do is like, we'll just figure out what solution Tesla does or whoever that works, and then we'll just like copy it, but do it more efficiently. And I'm like, that's not a strategy. Like that's a hope. So I think there's been a lot of this kind of wishful thinking that like, like we don't need to pay Tesla. Like, well, this will be a commodity. Everyone's going to figure it out. And then, so we'll just, do a lower cost option without having to invest in like the AI team and the data centers and the GPUs and all that. We'll just, like outsource it. That's not a realistic strategy.
We will do it with our German engineering.
But so
German engineering.
The second part of the of that was that people are not expecting a licensing deal to be announced. So I guess two questions for you. Do you think we'll have an FSD licensing deal announced, let's just say this calendar year at some point? And do you think that will be like a massive surprise to the market or to anyone?
I think it'd be smart if it happened. I do think it would be a massive surprise. Because Wall Street's not modeling in much money for Tesla self-driving yet. They're beginning to, but they're struggling to figure out, okay, how do we model this in? I don't think necessarily they'll get clarity on the pricing, like what's going to be the benefit per car for Tesla, for the other automaker to license it from Tesla. Be great if we did get that clarity, so Wall Street can model it out.
Yeah.
What do you think, Matt?
Yeah, I think it's true that it's not, nobody's really expecting it. It wouldn't surprise me if we get one licensing deal this year, but I don't know. If I had to peg a probability on it, I'd say maybe like a 40% chance that we get some sort of deal this year.
Mm-hmm.
If I were to broaden that out, say to end of next year, I think that's a lot more likely, because I think it'll be more and more clear that there's not a cheaper option out there to deliver the actual capabilities of autonomy than licensing this. Like, if you want to try to build your own, like, that's going to be way more expensive. So if instead you just, pay, let's say it's $1,000 for all the sensors, like the cameras, and the computer, and then maybe you pay Tesla half of the FSD price. So maybe it's like a, $4,000 on top of that or something like that. So then Tesla's getting, a good chunk of they're getting that license essentially. GM or Ford or whoever could sell it for, the comparable price as Tesla, $8,000 or whatever the price would be at that time. And then I think the assumption would be that any Robotaxi revenues, so like the platform fee, would go to Tesla also. To me, that's a nice deal for Ford or GM. You don't have to do any of the like analysis or whatever, and you get an option that will deliver you much more margin on your vehicles, even after paying for the royalty. So I think like the MBAs of these companies will just say, like, well, why wouldn't we have this as an option? It's like a free option to upsell your customers.
Right.
So I do think they'll get there eventually, but my sense is they'll probably delay taking the medicine until next year would be my guess. But I hope I'm wrong.
Yeah, I don't think I don't think like Ford or other companies can suddenly magic up a solution.
Well, that was intense. Look at that voice.
FSD.
Are you trying to intimidate me with your Clint Eastwood voice?
No, like it's just like something came up here. They can't just suddenly magic up a solution. They're not going to have the compute. You need all these great clips to start from the real world. Like Tesla,
not the haircut place.
Tesla had to figure it. Tesla had to figure it out and get all those clips before they could take the end-to-end approach. So there's all these gates and hurdles that people have to pass to solve this themselves. So they're going to be better off just buying it from Tesla. And I don't think people understand yet how good Tesla's software is, but they're going to quickly come to understand it. And there's going to be automotive CEOs that do try it out in Austin. I'm guessing Tesla's going to invite them to do it too.
Yeah.
So Jim Farley's going to do it.
Jim Farley would do it. Like he's a reasonable enough human being that he'll try it. Now he's resisted this in the past and said like, oh, we're very confident with Blue Cruise. Mm-hmm. But I also feel like you have to say that up until the point where you've made a decision that no, it doesn't work anymore, right?
Yeah. Yeah, the CEO Xiaomi, I believe, will come to the US and try it, and maybe BYD as well. I think they've done that to test out different Tesla versions. So I would expect that, and I'm curious to see what happens. But I would be expecting licensing, worst case, by next year.
Yeah.
I would think like 80% by the end of next year would be my probability.
Yeah,
It's just
that
it's
sounds
such a
about right.
killer feature.
It is, and especially, I mean, if you think of how killer it will be by next year, I mean, if Elon's right and you can actually do unsupervised, then like I think that becomes a must-have feature. I mean, if you're Mercedes or BMW or whatever, maybe BMW wouldn't want to do it because you want to be the ultimate driving machine. You don't want to be like the chauffeured around machine. Um, but like for a luxury car, to me that's like seems to be one of the features that you would absolutely want to have, so that if your time is your most valuable asset, if you're a high earning person that can afford a $70,000-$80,000 car, um, like being able to do some work or to watch Netflix at some point down the road, that's like, if Tesla has that and you don't, like that's just you're like conceding the a key portion of the value proposition going forward. So I do think it's going to become increasingly likely, like as the feature set gets so much better than all the competition, I think it becomes harder for there not to be a licensing deal. I think with where they were like 6 months ago, and even to some extent now, like, they can all say, oh, we've got like these autonomy features that are available on some roads and some situations. And you can say, okay, they all have their pros and cons. But I think it's clear, like if you're driving the latest Tesla version 13 with hardware 4, it's very clear that that's way better than anything else that's being offered. And if it gets to the point where it's unsupervised, like that's an absolute game changer in terms of like the value proposition to your potential customer. So maybe that's a point at which like they have to license it because you just can't catch up at that point.
Let's see the autonomy quote from Elon. Elon's been pretty active. The streets will change very rapidly. Autonomous cars will be very common throughout the world in 2 to 3 years.
So getting to the question of how quickly do we roll, and notice he said world. I actually just caught that. I kind of assumed he was talking about US, but he said world. There's been some interesting developments in Europe too. We need to maybe get Case back on. Actually, I'm going to see Case in next week. He's going to be at the Tesla Owners Michigan event, so maybe we can pick his brain a little bit. Maybe even do a video with him about what's going on with regulations, because there were some interesting developments that might have led to FSD being approved in Europe, or at least in some countries. But like this is this quote clearly speaks to the pace of how quickly it's going to roll out. So I guess that's the question. Like, it almost seems too good to be true to think that Elon's promise later or earlier this year of like by the end of this year we'll get unsupervised FSD for just regular customers like you and I, and then hundreds of thousands to like 1 million robotaxis next year. It still seems unlikely to me, but I don't know, where would you place the probability of that? Or maybe said another way, if you had to pick a date that's like your P50 of when do you and I get to sit in the back seat of our own cars, what would you say?
I think there's zero chance of unsupervised if Tesla is taking the liability. So I think they'll offer it if the customer gets the insurance, and if they accept liability for the accidents. Now, maybe that's something trial lawyers will try and wiggle out of, but that's my opinion. I don't think Tesla's going to offer that for free. Go ahead, Matt.
So you said zero chance if Tesla takes the liability, but I think you meant to say zero chance they will let you have unsupervised FSD unless you're paying them to take the liability through Tesla insurance. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, or you're getting insurance, or you waive the liability in some way.
Yeah, well, that seems also kind of like obviously true. Like,
well, so you're saying it's obvious, but when I raise this point to Randy Kirk or whatever, people think Tesla's just going to give it, allow us to do unsupervised for free.
I don't think that's at all possible. Like, I mean, just play that out. Like, what? So they give you the technology, it gets in a crash, even if it's not the car's fault. Like, you believe that if somebody sues you, some trial lawyer or whoever wants to make a bunch of money, where do you go? You go to the target that has the biggest wallet, which is going to be Tesla, not the individual.
Right.
Like that would be a field day of a court case. So yeah,
Mhm.
like to me, it just seems to me it seems very obvious that Tesla has to have the liability, and that you have to pay Tesla for taking that liability on.
Yeah.
And Tesla insurance is like the very obvious way to handle that.
So beyond that point, what was the next part?
Okay, so
Hundreds
when
of
do
thousands of robotaxis, right?
well, hundreds of and did you answer when do you and I get to go in the back seat of our own cars?
When unsupervised.
Okay, so contingent upon when Tesla insurance rolls out in our states.
Or, we could cover it ourselves, but um, I think they could do that by the end of this year. So, like,
All
if
right.
if they can iron out the wrinkles with the model with the 4x parameters, and there's no new things they need to fix. Like the whole red light behavior is totally new. We didn't have that for a very long time. Like maybe it did that in version 7 or something like that.
Yeah, like super very long time ago. Yeah.
I don't even know if it started at 7, but like the first version might have done that. Um, but like all the versions between the first version and 13 would not
Yeah.
go on reds.
I do remember that with like the Third Row podcast. I don't know if you remember like back in those days when they were,
Mhm.
Kristen and Omar and a couple others were doing this podcast. They had like the super early access to the first version of FSD, and I remember following it so closely. And they're like, "It's just really good. It catches most of the red lights." And I was like, "Wait, most like like how many? Well, like probably like 95%." I was like, "That okay? That is not that's not a reassuring stat." So yeah, that's a funny regression to go back way 5 years plus, to back to those days.
So about 100,000 or more robotaxis on the road next year. I think it could happen. I think the limit for Texas would be 50,000 in the state, but I don't know if Tesla would be running all those. So if they were literally running 5,000 or more in Austin, I think they would need to scale up a significant workforce to, bare minimum handle the charging and the processing of the cleaning. Even if they automate the cleaning, they would still need someone to kind of trigger it, all that. Um, and I think there's like some tricky stuff around the fleet, but they could also just bring on customer owned Model Ys, and then the customer is responsible for charging their Tesla at home.
Yeah, you're pretty big on the company owning robotaxis, and I get it because like the economics are good, and that way you don't have to share the economics with anyone.
Mhm.
But you got the crazy eyes.
I'm greedy. I'm greedy.
Well, but at the same time, I'm also greedy. I mean, I'm a proud capitalist, but like I think there's just challenges. I mean, like if you were to just like roll out as many as you possibly could off the production line.
Mhm.
I mean, we sort of saw this with like the Tesla dealerships really straining as the company went through this like S curve of the Model 3 ramp. Like they had a really hard time, even just handling the logistics of delivering those cars to the people, much less all the day in and day out operations that would be required of cleaning and charging and all that. Like and the more you try to centralize that, I think the less it will work well. Meaning if you want one company to kind of handle that, and you have like okay, we've got this parking lot right here that we can fit 200 Teslas in.
Mhm.
Like that's actually a lot more suboptimal just from a logistics standpoint than if you've got those same 100 spread out over 5 square miles in people's driveways, that and they can send them out and have them return back and clean them and everything that's required. So I think the operational challenges of scaling from like literally from 1 today to 1 million by the end of next year, I think that is extremely difficult, and I think it might be more cost effective and faster to just say, all right, well, we can handle scaling up logistically, I don't know, 50,000, 100,000, but then we'll just let everyone else kind of opt into the network, and you'll see the market just naturally adjust to where you can get the most money. I think distributing that responsibility on a micro level is going to be a more optimal way to scale than to have Tesla try to do it all.
It would help them scale a lot more quickly. We think Tesla could do about 50,000 in Texas, so they don't have to all be company owned, but they could be 50,000 full time. Arizona, you could probably do at least 25,000, if not closer to 30 or 40,000. Florida, they may need to work with an insurance partner there. But in Florida, you could easily do 50,000 or more, and maybe more like 60 or 70,000. So I could see a future where it's close to 200,000 or more by year end next year.
So some people might be hearing those numbers and saying, okay, that's not a whole lot. So what happens in 2026 and 2027 and 2028 when you're just adding more and more vehicles to the market and saturating them? And then are you just going to have extra demand or extra supply and they'll be underutilized?
Well, I want to talk to your point of it doesn't sound like a lot. So we did some calculations and we estimate around 400,000 full-time robotaxis would be needed to do the mileage that Uber does for their rideshare on an annual basis.
Mm-hmm.
So that 200,000 would be a lot because that would be half of.
I know. I'm lobbing you a softball because I get this, but I think some people might not necessarily be following the logic of like, okay, if all of Texas can do 70,000, like that actually doesn't sound like very many. And do you just saturate the market and the economics suck after that as you just add more and more robotaxis? So why is that not the case? Is the softball I'm lobbing up to you?
Yeah. So let's say they do 50,000 in Texas. So that would be cars that would mainly be running at $2 a mile, just kind of coming in a little bit under the price offered by Uber and Lyft. And then the wait time would be really short. It would be like 2 to 3 minutes. And then you have the benefits of not having a driver. So it would be, I think in general, be superior to an Uber at a lower price and a lower wait time.
Yeah.
So like that would be, you're not even saturating at 50,000 in Texas. Texas has a pretty high population, so you can.
And a lot of space in between. Like it's a must drive location, right? Like, I mean, there's a couple of places like within downtown Austin, for example, which is somewhat walkable, but even then it's a very, driver centric city and state. But the longer term, like there's a future where you could have 500,000 robotaxis in Texas, right? So how do you 10x the scale?
I don't know. That's a little bit more than my big brain can handle today. I'm just blown away by. I'm excited for seeing them on the streets in Austin. I feel like there's going to be a community that's now going to like be taking pictures every time they see a Tesla on the road, and then they're going to be zooming in on that picture to see is there a driver or not. Does it have the Robotaxi on the side?
Yeah, that was cool badge, by the way. I thought that was a pretty sweet looking sticker. Kind of took the Cybertruck graphic. What I was going to say,
your high level thought that you're not quite sharing.
Yeah, that's what I was about to
lead me to.
Kind of circle back to. So, the TAM that we were talking about of, like the daily commuters. So if we're talking about just, meeting the existing TAM of Uber, yeah, you can do that with, well under 1 million vehicles. But at that point, like if you're just playing the same game that Uber is charging or is playing and charging $2.50 per mile, then like there's not a whole lot to be grabbing there, because like maybe then you only grab 30% market share or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So the real game is to go cheaper price than Uber. So you mentioned $2 at first, but what we've been modeling as we're looking at this is, okay, as you approach a more and more meaningful share of Uber's total TAM, which is about 30 billion miles per year, as you get closer to that $30 billion figure, you've got to lower the price. And Uber did this study, which you've referenced several times. I think it bears repeating that if you lower the price by $1 per mile,
or two $1 miles.
Oh, sorry, two $1 per mile, the demand increases 20x.
Mm-hmm. 20
which is
times.
which is mind blowing. It's not like a 20% increase; that's a 20x increase.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, and then all of a sudden, which Tesla can do, by the way, we think in the very long run with Cybercab and everything, Tesla can actually price this more like 50, 60 cents a mile.
Mm-hmm.
But at a dollar per mile, which is what we're talking about there, then all of a sudden your 30 billion miles becomes a TAM of 600 billion miles. And so that's where I think you can get to having 500,000 vehicles in Texas, or millions of vehicles across the United States, because you're at a lower price point, so you're increasing that demand. And that's the point where you'll have some people kind of eschewing personal car ownership and opting instead just to have purchase rides individually at a lower cost of total transportation. So you might go like from this scenario where, like, if you take your car payment and your insurance and your fuel and your maintenance and you like add that all up, maybe that's $600 a month. Well, if you don't travel that much, maybe you end up paying, maybe let's say you're the average person and you drive, what is it, 10,000 miles a year. And maybe that math doesn't quite work as well. But like you're getting close anyways to the all-in cost of ownership. And if you are a less frequent driver, so let's say you drive only 100 miles a month, which there are definitely a lot of people that are in that category, then you could be paying $100 a month for your transportation instead of $500, $600 plus the high upfront capital cost that we were talking about earlier. So this market really is a lot bigger at a lower price point than I think most people realize.
Yep. It's not going to be initially about replacing cars.
No.
That's what we're talking about. So I think the layup is going to be college towns. So you get a younger crowd that's more likely to try new things, try things on the app. And it's with commuters and people who are middle and working class, who aren't as privileged as most Tesla owners. So we think this is going to be a big thing for Tesla and for society. Matt, I'm going to give you a chance to toot your own horn a little bit. So what are we doing or not doing, especially this week when it came to Tesla stock?
Yes. Okay, so people have have seen us talk about covered calls a lot, because one of the things we talk about is our value proposition for clients that we're managing funds for is we sell covered calls against Tesla, your Tesla position, as a way to kind of create some sort of a dividend yield kind of thing. So you're getting some yield from your investments on a stock that doesn't pay a dividend. So that's why we do it. We've done a lot of analysis that shows that it works. But you have weeks like this week where Tesla just goes crazy. And I don't know what it's up on the week so far, but probably 15, 18% or something like that. And it's only Tuesday. So when we were looking at selling covered calls on
Monday morning, the stock was 282. So it's up over 10%, probably something like close to 15% since then.
Yeah. So, and that's in 2 trading days. So we were having this conversation yesterday, and I just did not like the setup. The premium was actually pretty decent that was being offered, like definitely higher than average that we've seen. But with like the impending like 6/12 date right there, and just how much it had been, we were basically right in the middle of a pretty massive low. I just thought the risk reward was not very attractive. So I made the executive decision to skip selling covered calls for this week. And boy, was that a good one, because the covered calls we were looking at have increased in value by about 10x from where we were looking at them. So that's something we have I would say, like, pretty remarkable track record of doing. I think the last 3 losing weeks that in our strategy we've actually skipped, and then if this week ends up being a losing week too, that would have been 4 in a row, which is like, that's kind of nutty given that some years may only have like 1 losing week. So to skip 4 is honestly, there's a bit of luck in there, but that's also some skill of looking at what's going on with the market and just making that decision. So super pumped for our clients that we had yet another good call to skip a week of selling covered calls.
So every time there's a fevered start to the week, people criticize us because we do sell covered calls. And if we did that robotically, we would be we might
This would
be
be
in
a
a little
painful
bit of
week.
trouble.
Yeah, you and I might not feeling quite so happy right now if we'd sold covered calls.
Mhm. So, so that's a little bit what we do at Rebellionaire. Cover calls to add a little bit of income. We also do some trimming and adding. So that's when sentiment gets a little too far over its skis. Um, Matt, I'm curious. We normally don't share this, but where are your thoughts on sentiment around Tesla stock right now?
Um, you have to kind of like pick the micro minute because man, was it in the tank on Friday last
Mhm,
week, and even like opening up on Monday morning, you were down a little bit more.
mhm,
Um, sentiment it's definitely super high right now. So I kind of need to take a step back and say, okay, today and the move up aside. I mean, like I said at the beginning of this, we're actually down 5% on the 5 day. So we're feeling super giddy. But if like in the grand scheme of Tesla stock, like we're um,
kind of where we were.
kind of just where we were.
Mhm,
I think where we are, it's we're in this super weird space that I'm not sure we've ever been in, where fundamentals are super weak. I thought we'd
mhm,
see a pretty positive return, to maybe 420, 430,000 units in Q2. We're going to be nowhere near that. We're going to be, I don't know, 360, 370, which is
yeah.
pretty terrible, considering you just refreshed the Model Y and it's an amazing vehicle. So you got like really terrible fundamentals, a lot of noise around politics and customers. Some customers, I think, are just choosing not to buy the cars because it's become something of a political statement to have a Tesla, which, yeah, for better or worse, I think that's just kind of the zeitgeist right now.
Mhm,
So you've got like very weak fundamentals, and at the same time, we are like potentially months away from very meaningful impact to the income statement from Robotaxi revenue. My sense is in modeling this out, probably second half of next year is when you'll start to really see the pickup. But I mean, if they um, so I think that's where the fundamentals will catch up. Let's say
yeah.
12 months from now. But in the meantime, like the stock market is not totally backward looking, where they're going to wait for the earnings to show up before they start giving some credit.
Mhm,
And I think with where the price is right now, the stock market's definitely giving some credit already for
yeah.
autonomy.
Yes,
But
we
then
do.
the question is, okay, is an FSD deal going to be happening? Do you see a meaningful uptick in FSD take rates in Q3 or Q4 as this functionality gets so much better? So there's some variables like that could actually move the needle. That could cause I think Tesla's a very, very clearly a story stock. So I think there's some stuff that could still drop that could cause fuel to kind of go onto the fire of the bullish side. So um, I'll, that's a very rambling way of saying I think we're kind of caught in the middle of like weak fundamentals on the core business, and
Mhm,
then the core business actually really changing to something that's more AI and services based, in the market kind of giving partial credit to where we are right now. And I think that's fair. And so what I think is probably going to happen is that the company is going to need to execute along the AI path in order to in order to deserve the credit for those upward steps in valuation that we think will be achieved eventually. How does that strike you?
that's pretty good. Pretty good. I'll give you an A on that.
All
Uh,
right. Good.
so you mentioned a fundamental weakness in the main business before we get to Robotaxi, and I believe expectations are in check among Tesla bulls. I did a poll about this last week on Thursday, where I asked, or maybe it's before, where I asked what were your expectations around deliveries, because my concern was that people weren't they thought like we would easily be above a 400,000 for this quarter,
Yeah.
and expectations were very in check. Most people voted for under 350,000.
Yeah.
uh, then there was a chunk between 350 and 400, and then a minority were above 400. So it was pretty roundly in check. So I think that's good. Expectations are low. So then the contrarian indicator of those expectations is if they do a little better, that the stock could bounce off of that. Also, it's just known. So, maybe that won't move the stock when the earnings actually come. So that's a little bit of a taste of what Matt and I talk about, bare minimum every other day, if not every day. And you can check us out on rebellionaire.com. We got a lot of views on this video so far live. We are live every Tuesday at 4 p.m. Eastern, right after the market close. So Matt, let's check out something that's a little painful for me. The rear wheel drive lease on the Model Y.
I thought you were going to talk about a rash or something.
I'm a proud owner of a launch edition Model Y, which if you lease it, the lease is about $700 a month, I believe. I ended up upgrading my miles, so I'm at $800 a month. So what's the news here?
3 months FSD with your favorite referral? No. $390. I didn't even see this one. $399 a month. Geez, that is crazy.
Mm-hmm.
So that's with 15% down though. Is that comparable to what you had?
I think so.
Wow, that's an amazing deal. It actually still is very confusing to me why Tesla's not selling more cars. I mean, like the price, people still think they're expensive.
Uh-huh.
They're really not. Like for the quality of car you're getting, it's actually very cheap.
It's better than a Beamer, a Benz, or an Audi. You don't get a crystal gear shifter or anything like that, but it's a far superior car.
You don't even get a gear shifter at all.
Yeah, I think it's a lack of awareness in general. Now, this one may hurt you a little bit, Matt. We got a little news about a 7-seat Model Y.
All right. Yeah, so for those who don't know, I used to have a 7-seat Model Y, the older version of it.
Mm-hmm.
On this new Juniper upgrade, whatever we're calling it, get the refreshed Model Y, they've only offered the 5-seater so far. So back in February, I actually updated to a Model X because I didn't want to I needed hardware just to feel like I was doing the proper diligence on FSD for our clients. Since we're investing so much Tesla, like I honestly feel a moral responsibility to drive the latest and greatest.
Mm-hmm.
So I could not actually justify this purchase on my own, but had the 7-seat Model Y been available back then, I almost certainly would have opted for it. So that's hurts a little bit, I guess, but also I do love the Model X, and it's a great car. But
it's a little cramped. Let's go back to this quote because this quote has me a little excited. Now Tesla might be overhyping a little bit, but this quote says, "Seating for up to 7 and enough room for everyone's gear." So let's go back to Matt. So with your 7-seater, you owned it. It was pretty cramped in the back. You need to have it for kids with the old 7-seater. I'm guessing that may be the case for the new thing. But how much room was there for gear in the back when you were using all 3 rows?
Not much at all. Like you definitely couldn't fit a stroller back there or anything like that. The one nice thing is that you got the sub trunk still. So like,
Mm-hmm.
If you needed to put like a couple groceries or bags or something like that, you could fit that there. But I don't know. I'm going off memory a little bit, but I want to say like the trunk space was like about this wide with the thing, and then you've got the seats
all the way
leaning back
to the glass.
Yeah. So I definitely would not say the old version was enough room for 7 people and everyone's gear, but I mean,
so if I were
people don't have a lot of gear.
If I were to be overly bullish about this quote from Tesla, I would maybe we're getting an extended length Model Y. That would be pretty exciting, more affordable vehicle. It'd be a lot more exciting than just like a stripped down Model Y.
We haven't heard much about these new models that are coming in the first half of 2025. And last I checked, we've only got 20 days left in the first half of 2025. So I don't know that we're necessarily going to get like a long wheelbase version of it, but that would be pretty awesome. And I actually think it would also kind of jibe with what we've been hearing about different variants on the existing lines. So that's not outside the realm of possibility, I don't think. And it would be nice because like the 7-seater was really not workable for adults. So I'm 5'11", and I could not physically fit back there, even with like under the most generous configuration. Like I had to kind of contort my knees up like this, and it was like I'd get a cramp pretty quickly trying to do that. I actually picked it up though with Chris, who's Dirty Tesla. He's a little bit shorter. I don't know, maybe 5'8", 5'9". I don't know exactly how tall he is, but he fit there with his knees straight forward. And he's like, yeah, for like a 10-minute ride or something like that, I could make that work. So if you've got kids or, maybe an adult back there for just a short ride, like the existing wheelbase kind of works. But an extended version would definitely be more popular if you actually need the space for 7.
Okay. So we're getting into extended minutes. I'm going to eat a little crow.
Ooh, okay.
I've been pretty critical. I've been critical about Figure AI. And one of the things I talk about with their videos is, I feel like, maybe they were cherry picked. Tesla could easily cherry pick their videos too. But I've been skeptical of Figure AI and how, I like somewhat impressed I've been with their videos, but this one I was really impressed. I feel like they put it out just to address my cherry picking criticism. So let's roll the tape. They ended up putting out a 1-hour video where they show their Figure robot doing this package sorting. Each one's a little bit differently. I know they just showed like 3 boxes in a row, but there's all these different envelopes and different padding on the envelopes. So these boxes are different sizes. It's using each box a little differently. So like there was a thin envelope, and there's this ramp in the lower left corner. There's a ramp that it can use to kind of grab the corner of.
Oh yeah, I hadn't noticed that. That's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
To get some lift, and so you can reach underneath it somewhat easily.
Yeah, so you can get underneath it and flip it. So what this process is doing is it's putting the label face down so it can be scanned for some portion and some kind of automated package sorting. So this might be something that the U.S. Postal Service would do to get things sorted and on their high-speed, conveyance systems where they, move it on a conveyor rail or whatever. I was very impressed. It was an hour long, and it did so well. It was really boring to watch. But that is the
goal. That's the goal. Yeah. I think this is something that is also hard for people to wrap their heads around. Like, you saw the old Boston Dynamics videos of like jumping around, and like that looks awesome and it's like super impressive visually to look at. Zero economic use in doing that whatsoever. Like it actually has no business case whatsoever. Some of the other stuff
maybe firefighting though.
Okay, but like even then, it wasn't actually fighting fires. It was just like showing some cool capabilities of like jumping. So like if there was a 10-minute long video of that robot fighting a fire, like that would actually be useful information because it's showing that it's capable of doing it. Some of the other videos we've seen are like showing that like, okay, the apple goes over here and the dish goes over here. Like some of that was also really cool, but highly edited and like very cherry picked, as you said. So I think there's been reasons for skepticism. Yeah. This is the gold standard. What we want for any autonomous company, Figure, Tesla, Apptronic, any of them, is to see doing a job that you can charge, that you have to pay somebody some amount of money per hour right now, and doing that for an hour, multiple hours at a time, at a quality level that's comparable to a human. Once you've done that, like that's real economically useful work that you can generate some revenue from. Anything before that is just like a pilot that shows like an indication of where the technology could go. What I almost said Apptronic. What Figure showed here is actual work that's economically useful and doing it for a long time. So I agree with you. This credit where it's due. I've been skeptical of Brett Adcock. I still am, but I think this is a very impressive video that they showed, even though it's actually not that impressive to watch.
Yeah, it's impressive but boring. Yeah.
Which like that's what we want on all these AI systems. Like you want a year from now nobody to be watching like AI videos or FSD videos because like it's just boring. It's just doing what it's supposed to do. Like there's no entertainment value in that, but there's huge economic utility in that. So that's the gold standard: uneventful, predictable chores being done by robots or cars. That's where massive amounts of money are going to be made.
And I know there's more like heartless employers out there, but I would not want to pay someone to sit at a station to do that job all day long. That would, as a human being, that would suck to do that for multiple hours a day. Even if you get rotated to some other stations, that would still not be fun to do. So I think that's a great job to automate with robots. So it's exciting to see that. I confident that Tesla is going to get to that point, but it was good to see someone doing that, and I want to cover that and eat a little bit of crow. Another point on the competition front, we got Uber and Wave saying in London next spring. You can. I wanted to make some kind of British slang joke, but I don't know enough to make a joke here. But no human safety driver at the wheel, autonomous cars in London. We've seen a video from Wave where they're going from one point to another in London. Granted that might be a bit cherry picked, but Uber will be offering some rides in London. Don't know how limited that'll be. I'm curious, like, will it be geo-fenced to a nice size area, or is it just going to be downtown to the airport or something like that?
What I want to know is what is the all-in cost per mile? Because if you can't compete when the pricing is $1 per mile, then I don't think you're going to make it. So this is something that you've seen Waymo be very sketchy about not actually releasing their cost and all this sort of stuff. It seems very clear, like all the reporting we have is that like there was what was it, $900,000 of damage, which if you do the math on these Waymos in Los Angeles worked out to be like $120,000 or $150,000 per vehicle, something like that. If that's what you're charging, then you will not be able to compete with Tesla that can produce these for say $25,000 at scale. So I think the ability to compete at $1 per mile or less as the end user's price, that's going to be what really matters. Like I think we're going to have tons of demonstrations and pilots from a variety of different companies that show something that works in the next couple of years, next 6 months in particular. But what really matters in the long run is being able to do the boring, repetitive thing at massive scale, so in any geography, and to do so at the lowest possible cost with the highest possible safety.
Yeah, so I was surprised to hear, was it Bill Gurley of the Brad Gerstner and Bill Gurley
BG2 pod?
The BG2 pod, and they have their firm. I forget what it was. They sold all their Tesla in the first quarter. I'm guessing they may have bought it back in April. I'm curious to see what happened, but I think Bill's more of a story guy and more a high level guy, kind of like I am. But it was interesting to see he was unaware how expensive the Waymo cars are.
Yeah, I was so surprised to see his comment on there. I was like, really? You don't like this is core to like your investment thesis? Like,
yeah. I'm confident that their analyst knew that someone at their firm knew.
Yeah.
essentially, like the first 150,000 miles, you're paying $1 a mile in depreciation, just from like all the equipment costs that you have with the Waymos. Now the cost may come down over time, but they're still essentially hand building these. Jaguar finished making a bunch.
Jaguar.
Jaguar finished making a bunch of them, but essentially they were hand built. It's not a process that scales. Maybe I think they're going to partner with Toyota to lower their cost. And certainly if the LiDAR technology scaled, the cost of LiDAR would come down with Wright's Law. Can't forget Wright's Law.
Ooh, good shout out Kathy Wood.
Yeah. So to recap, Matt and I are excited about the Robotaxi rollout in Austin, Texas. And I forgot, I'm really proud of all the retail investors. There was tremendous buying of Tesla stock and TSLL and other things. So they didn't panic. So it was more so institutions that were selling, and maybe people who had their money with institutions that were selling Tesla stock. We're excited about the Robotaxi rollout. We're curious to follow the shape, size, and nature of it. He's Matt Smith. I'm Bradford Ferguson, and we're with Rebellionaire, rebellionaire.com. We help all-in Tesla investors and also people who are not, but that's okay. And with that, I'm going to say,
meet you where you are.
Well,
and
yeah.
we do believe in covered calls. So we're celebrating that we didn't sell covered calls, but we are going to get right back to the well. Can't guarantee we'll do it for sure next week, but generally, like after you've got a run up like this, it's like a great time to take advantage of the increased volatility. So super excited for what we've been able to do for clients. And if you're interested in learning more, go check us out.
Yep. With that, I'm going to say bye for now.
Bye for now.